On November 25th, 1177, a dying 16-year-old boy with bandaged hands and 500 knights faced down 26,000 of Islam's finest warriors. By sunset, the most powerful Muslim army in the world lay shattered, and history's most unlikely military genius had written his legend in blood. Think about those numbers for a second. 500 against 26,000, that's a 52-to-1 disadvantage. The fate of Christian civilization in the Holy Land hung by a thread so thin it was invisible. Yet by the end of this video, you'll understand how a teenage leper king achieved the impossible. Why Saladin, the greatest Muslim commander of the age, made the fatal error that cost him everything, and what really happened in those savage moments when faith collided with steel. I'm about to reveal 3 things that will change how you see medieval warfare forever. First, the secret signal that turned certain death into total victory. Second, why Saladin's elite bodyguard fled on camels, abandoning their legendary leader. And third, the haunting final words between Baldwin and Saladin that history tried to forget. But here's what makes this story truly unbelievable. How did Baldwin even hold a sword with advanced leprosy eating away his flesh? What tactical mistake did Saladin make that no historian saw coming? Why did Muslim chroniclers themselves call this battle a divine punishment? How could seasoned Mamluk cavalry warriors who'd never known defeat break before teenage knights? How could 90% of an army simply vanish in one afternoon? This is the story of the masked king who couldn't feel pain versus the Sultan who had never known defeat. To understand how 500 men destroyed an empire's might, we need to step back to when Jerusalem itself was preparing for the end. The year 1177 marked the darkest hour for the Crusader kingdoms. For nearly 8 decades, Christian knights had clung to their precarious footholds in the Holy Land, but now the tide was turning, and turning fast. The great Crusader fortresses that once dominated the landscape were falling one by one, their defenders overwhelmed by a resurgent Islamic world united under one man, Saladin. But in Jerusalem, something extraordinary occupied the throne. Baldwin IV, crowned at 13, carried a curse that should have killed him years ago. Leprosy, the disease medieval minds saw as God's own judgment. By 16, his body was failing. His hands, wrapped in silk bandages, could barely grip a sword. His face, hidden behind a silver mask, concealed features ravaged by disease. Courtiers whispered he was cursed by God, yet somehow, impossibly, he ruled with a clarity that stunned friend and foe alike. They called him the Leper King, the boy who shouldn't be alive, much less leading armies. Facing him stood Saladin, the sword of Islam, a leader who combined military genius with genuine piety. At 40, he'd united Egypt and Syria, forging the most powerful Muslim state since the early caliphates. His army had crushed every force sent against it. His reputation alone could empty castles without firing a shot. While Baldwin fought his own decaying body, Saladin commanded an empire stretching from the Nile to the Euphrates. The power dynamic was laughably one-sided. The Crusader states, fractured by internal rivalries, could muster perhaps 15,000 men, total scattered across dozens of castles and cities. Saladin commanded over 100,000 warriors, with the wealth of Egypt funding endless campaigns. It wasn't a question of if the Crusaders would fall, but when. Jerusalem's nobles already made secret preparations for exile. Ships waited in the ports. Treaties were quietly negotiated. The smart money said the Kingdom of Jerusalem had months, maybe weeks. But here's what the chronicles don't tell you. Baldwin IV wasn't just fighting Saladin. He was racing against his own body, knowing each battle might be his last, each victory purchased with agony no healthy man could endure. As autumn turned to winter in 1177, intelligence reports brought terrifying news. Saladin was massing the largest army of his career, 26,000 mounted warriors, including his elite Mamluk cavalry. Their destination was obvious, Jerusalem itself. The city's garrison numbered less than 1,000 men. The arithmetic of annihilation was simple. But as Saladin's massive host swept north like a plague of locusts, something unprecedented was stirring in Jerusalem's throne room. Inside Jerusalem's throne room, Baldwin IV faced a decision that would define history. His advisors begged him to flee. A Leper King of 16 had no business leading a last stand. But Baldwin, carried to the war council on a litter because walking had become agony, spoke with a voice that made hardened crusaders weep. "I may die tomorrow or in 10 years, but I will die as I lived, defending this kingdom." The mathematics of survival were brutal. Baldwin could muster only 500 knights, including 80 Knights Templar, warrior monks who took vows to never retreat, never surrender, never show mercy to Islam's warriors. Supporting them were barely 3,000 infantry, many of them local levies with more courage than training. Together, they faced annihilation. Saladin's host was something from an apocalyptic vision. 26,000 mounted warriors, including 8,000 Mamluk slave soldiers trained from childhood in the arts of war, each worth 3 ordinary cavalry in battle. The Muslim chroniclers described it as an ocean of steel and faith. The supply train alone stretched for miles, evidence of Saladin's confidence. He wasn't planning a raid. He was planning conquest. What happened next shocked both Christian and Muslim chroniclers. Baldwin, despite hands so damaged he needed help putting on armor, insisted on personally leading the army. Templars wept openly as their king was lifted onto his horse, his body strapped to the saddle because his legs could no longer grip. The silver mask hiding his ravaged features gleamed in the November sun. "Look at me," Baldwin told his assembled knights. "God gave me this disease so that when we achieve victory, no man can claim it was by human strength alone." Saladin, camped near Ascalon, received reports of Baldwin's pathetic force with amusement. His emirs were already dividing up the conquered lands